I'll be honest with you. Whenever there's a hyped book going around YouTube or Instagram, I'm usually going to read said book. I am definitely somebody that succumbs to the hype. By the title of this video, you already know which book I'm talking about, and that's the book I'm going to be reviewing today. #MurderTrending by Gretchen McNeil. I know I'm not the first person that has told you about this book, but I read it, I liked it, and I have thoughts. Let's start off with the title. I mean,
there's a freaking hashtag in the title. How cool is that?
I've never read a book with a hashtag in the title, so like 1 star just for that. Murder Trending is basically Scream Queens meets The Hunger Games. The story takes place in a dystopian world where inmates are sent to Alcatraz 2.0, where inmates are killed for other people's enjoyment. There's an app where citizens can watch executions, which is organized by the postman and his organization. There's a forum in which citizens can make comments about executions, what they like and what they didn't like. There are a set of executioners throughout the book that are specialized to do certain killings in a certain way. A 17-year-old girl named Dee finds herself in Alcatraz 2.0 after allegedly killing her sister Monica. Now this review is going to include spoilers and non-spoilers, so the first good portion of this review will not be spoilery, and when I get into the spoilery section, I'll be sure to let you know. Right from the start, chapter 1, I absolutely love how badass Dee is. She's able to resist Prince Slicer.
What a name! Like Prince Slicer, damn!
And through her resistance, she finds herself to be alive for yet another day on Alcatraz 2.0. In the first chapter, she's cosplayed as a fairy tale princess, and I just thought that it was super morbid that inmates are dressed in certain costumes and then people kill them. I also found that aspect to be interesting, and later on we discover Robin Hood, which is another fairy tale character that one of the killers is disguised as. Moving on, right from the book, I was skeptical as to whether or not Dee had committed a crime in killing her sister. Her stepsister, I honestly don't remember. From the start, I was pretty skeptical as to whether or not Dee was lying about her innocence. Of course you want to believe the main character in any book, but I was thinking maybe that would make for a great plot twist. Was it a plot twist? I'll let you know in the spoilery section. The most interesting aspect of this book for me is that it puts criminals into perspective and makes you think about the whole meaning of justice. Throughout the entire story, we are rooting for the Death Row Breakfast Club, but they're criminals, right? Should we be rooting for criminals? We can assume that most of them are guilty of their crimes, and as people start dying one by one, it makes you think, did they really deserve to die in such a gruesome way? In one aspect, we're all like the postmatics, the citizens who are watching these executions, and we really believe that these criminals deserve it and that it is justice. But in another respect, it's pretty gruesome to watch anybody dying in such a violent way. The main question that this book brings is, should capital punishment be made accessible to the public? And if so, should it be so violent? Let's talk about some of the people that show up in Murder Trending because I got thoughts on them too. We're introduced to Niles, and of course he has a British accent that makes me look at the stars and think, why can't I have my own British fanboy? And of course he's the first possible love interest, and whether or not he actually becomes said love interest, I will reveal in the spoilery section. Niles is a pretty good guy, I don't really have anything against him. Another character that we meet is Griselda, and she's just pretty much a big bitch. One thing that kind of annoyed me in the book is how nobody really appreciated Dee for what she did in the first chapter. They treat her like a princess when really she's not. She's a very strong person, and I don't think she deserves to be treated that way. One thing that I really wish I would see more in this book is just more chapters from the postman's perspective. We got a 2-page chapter perspective from him, and I found out one of the most interesting points in the story. So that's it for the non-spoilery section because I have a lot of spoilery thoughts. I highly recommend this book, and if you haven't read it, please go read it, come back, and we can talk all about the spoilery things. My first theory going into this book was that the postman is not an elderly man as the rumors say. I believe he suffered at the hands of a horrible murderer who maybe killed somebody in his family, somebody that he cared about, and that's why he created Alcatraz 2.0 to exact revenge on future criminals. Unfortunately, as you know, that theory did not turn out to be correct, so theory number 1 I did not get. One of the things that really creeped me out in this book was when they were going to bed and Niles told her that she can't even go to bed at nighttime because that's when they come for you, and I'm like, girl, when do I sleep? I can't imagine going to bed at day or night and being terrified that someone's just gonna come in your bed, kidnap you, and then brutally murder you.
Like, I'm not about that life, I'm sorry.
Another thing that I didn't like about this book is that Dee just didn't seem worried enough about her own well-being. She keeps talking about how she wants to exact revenge and find Monica's true killer, which is all fine and dandy. But I feel like realistically, being a 17-year-old, and I'm a 17-year-old, so I can relate, she'd be worried about how the hell do I get out of this place? How do I survive in this place, first of all? She wants to find Monica's killer, she has to be alive first, and I feel like she wasn't looking out for herself as much as she should have. It's pretty unrealistic to think that a 17-year-old wouldn't be shitting her pants on a place like Alcatraz 2.0 because let me tell you, I'd be shitting my pants. Let's move on to the subplot line of Dee being kidnapped as a child by a 14-year-old named Kimmy. I couldn't believe when it was revealed that Kimmy's only 14 years old, like crazy. How could a 14-year-old have the mental capacity to go and think of kidnapping someone? Like, who is Kimmy? That's all I kept thinking. Who is Kimmy? Where is she? Is she still in jail? Like, what's happening? It is pretty evident that there is a relationship between Kimmy and the postman, and I was on my heels trying to figure out what the relationship was. There was a point in the book when Dee tried to use Niles' diplomatic immunity to contact her father. And after doing so, her dad supposedly went on the forum and wrote a message to Dee saying that he's helping her and he's looking out for her, and at the end he signatured it with a P. Let me tell you, at first I was like, okay, that is not her dad. I mean, I know her dad is the only one that would sign it off with a P, but come on, the postman could have probably easily tortured him for that information. Fortunately, this idea is never explored further in the book, so I don't know if that was really her dad. It seems like it is, but I really wish it wasn't because that would make for a little plot twist, and I'm all here for that plot twist. 2/3 into this book, I had another theory. After we find out that almost everybody on Alcatraz 2.0 is dead, and only the Death Row Breakfast Club is alive, I'm like, what? But then a light bulb goes off in my head and I think, the postman is doing something. And I thought that the postman was trying to keep them all alive and eventually turn them on each other to spike the ratings. I mean, doesn't that seem logical? He would probably be like,
hey, so one of y'all guys gotta stay alive, and you have to kill everybody else, and whoever stays alive is gonna leave this place.
I honestly thought that was gonna happen, and it didn't, and I really wanted it to because, like, that would have been interesting. Would Griselda or Niles or even Dee kill her friends just for their own safety? I think it's pretty possible. Survival instincts kick in, and this could have been a brutal battle. And then I came up with another theory that Kimmy is really the postman, and she actually hired somebody to kill Monica and frame Dee and put her in this Alcatraz 2.0 to get revenge on her. And as we find out later in the book, my theory was sort of right. Near the end of the book, Kimmy was confronting Dee about her master plan. And Kimmy let it slip that Dr. Farouk was actually bribed into testifying against criminals to put them in Alcatraz 2.0. Then Kimmy said something absolutely hilarious about Dr. Farouk.
That bitch! Kimmy practically spat out the words. Can you believe she told Daddy I was dangerously psychotic? I mean, is that even a diagnosis? What kind of doctor was she?
I'm pretty sure Dr. Farouk was right about one thing. You are dangerously psychotic if you're kidnapping people and killing them just because you want to. So how messed up was it that Dr. Farouk was bribed into falsely testifying against innocent people? It's enraging, and there's one point that I agree with Kimmy. Dr. Farouk is a bitch, just for a very different reason. I will say I am a little bit disappointed that Alcatraz 2.0 is just a ruse set up by Kimmy and her messed up father to exact revenge on Dee. I was hoping that the Alcatraz was a place supported by the government's idea of justice, however it turned out not to be. It was just to fill some bloodthirst by two psychotic people. Another interesting thing I noticed is that the behavior of the people on the forums changed drastically throughout the book. In the first third of the book, the people on the forums were all super excited to watch inmates die. But as time went on, they started getting more suspicious as to why certain camera feeds were being cut off. And then by the end, they were coming up with all these conspiracy theories and they were against the Department of Justice and the postman, and in a way they were kind of rooting for the inmates at the end. This book makes an interesting comment on how quickly human behavior can change. I was pretty damn shook when Dee thought that Griselda and Niles was Kimmy and her brother in disguise. I was honestly duped and I believed that's who they really were, but at the end we find out that Dee was actually smart enough in front of the cameras to make it seem like she thought that's what was happening. At the end, it is revealed to us that Prince Slicer is the postman, and I was kind of confused at that. Does that mean that Prince Slicer is Kimmy's father because the postman is her father? And that also means that because Prince Slicer was murdered by Dee in the first chapter, that she is now the postman, which I guessed earlier on, thank you very much. And also near the end, Niles and Dee kiss, and I'm just like, oh, he became the stereotypical love interest that I really didn't want to see. But I gotta live with it because authors just break my heart this way. And then we have the ending when Niles and Dee are kissing and they think everything is fine, and then the crow camera moves in their direction. Like, what's going on? That ending is definitely a cliffhanger, and now I have to wait for the second book, and I'm just like, ugh, why is there a second book? I wish it ended with Murder Trending, just in a happier way. But I am gonna have to read the second book because that cliffhanger though. My final theory with Murder Trending is that the postman just hired somebody to pretend to be Kimmy to mess with Dee and make her think that she's actually free. I think he put on this whole charade just to psychologically screw with the inmates. In the end, I think Dee, Niles, and Griselda are still trapped on this island. And that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this review. I know I didn't go into all the characters and all the details. I'm pretty scatterbrained when it comes to doing a book review, but in the end, I hope you found some useful information and insight. Bye!